In mid-July 2002, a serious incident occurred in the city of Stanton, California, leaving a lasting impact not only on the local community but also on public opinion nationwide. A 5-year-old girl went missing while playing near her home with a friend, prompting a large-scale investigation shortly afterward. Just one day later, her body was discovered in an area not far from where she had disappeared, raising significant concerns about a possible violent crime involving a child. The primary suspect was Alejandro Avila, a local resident who had previously been investigated in a child abuse case, though he had been acquitted in 2001. His connection to this new case quickly drew public and media attention, especially as forensic evidence, cell phone data, and eyewitness testimonies began to emerge throughout the investigation. The case led to a high-profile criminal trial that lasted several years and concluded with the most severe sentence available under the U.S. justice system. During the trial, numerous legal issues were raised, including the admissibility of DNA evidence, the reliability of witness statements, and the influence of media coverage on public perception. This case serves not only as a clear example of how serious criminal investigations and trials unfold, but also raises important questions about society's approach to child protection, recidivism, prevention, and public awareness. By analyzing the full course of this case, one can gain deeper insight into the mechanisms of the legal system, the role of forensic science, and the shared responsibility to foster a safer and more just environment for all. Alejandro Avila is a convicted murderer who killed 5-year-old Samantha Runnion in California in July 2002. He was sentenced to death and is currently imprisoned at San Quentin State Prison in California. The crime: on July 15, 2002, in Stanton, California, 5-year-old Samantha Runnion was playing a board game in the front yard of her home with her 6-year-old playmate Sarah Arn. Avila, who was cruising the area, approached the girls asking if they had seen his Chihuahua dog. Samantha, who cared for animals and even owned a cat, approached the vehicle and asked, "How big is it?" Avila then snatched the girl, threw her into the back of his vehicle, and drove off. Samantha kicked and screamed, but Avila did not let her go. She screamed to her friend, "Tell my grandma! Tell my grandma!" Her naked body was found the next day in neighboring Riverside County. She was sexually molested and posed almost as if the killer was showing off his work. Sarah Arn, the only eyewitness to the abduction, provided a portrait of the kidnapper. The drawing revealed a Hispanic male with a mustache, slicked black hair, brown eyes, and between 25 to 35 years old. The abductor drove a light green Honda. On July 18th, investigators received a tip to look into Alejandro Avila, who had been acquitted in 2001, of sexually molesting his ex-girlfriend's 9-year-old daughter and her cousin. The police soon discovered that Avila, who lived with his mother and sister, came home very late the night Samantha was abducted and could not account for his whereabouts. As the investigation continued, the evidence against Avila became more damning. According to court documents, calls from Avila's cell phone were made in Samantha's neighborhood on the day of her abduction. His bank card was used to rent a motel room the same day. Samantha, who was kept alive for several hours after the kidnapping, is believed to have been molested and ultimately killed in that room. Avila's DNA was found on Samantha's body, and her DNA was found in his vehicle. Avila was formally charged for Samantha's death, July 23, 2002, and was held at the Orange County Jail until his conviction in 2005. Notes: during his 2005 murder trial, the prosecution revealed an ongoing conversation between Avila and another sex offender on the file-sharing program Kazaa. The sex offender, who was not called for the trial, is believed to have been in Europe. In the conversation, Avila and the pedophile boasted about molesting young girls. Both pedophiles agreed it was wrong to molest a child related to himself, but okay if the child was a stranger. Avila was sometimes referred to as Alex or Alexander. Between the time Samantha was found dead and Avila's arrest, the murder received a lot of media coverage. Avila's mother, watching the coverage, told Avila she hoped the murderer was soon caught. Avila asked, "Do you think they should give him the death penalty?" His mother's reply, "Yes." Throughout the search for Avila Orange County, Sheriff Mike Corona was best known for saying to Avila, "Don't eat, don't sleep, because we're coming after you." Jury convicts Alejandro Avila in death of Samantha Runnion, man accused of killing 5-year-old girl. April 28th, 2005, KMBC.com. Los Angeles. Jurors convicted Alejandro Avila Thursday in the 2002 death of 5-year-old Samantha Runnion. Avila, 30, was convicted of kidnapping, murder, and 2 counts of sexual assault. Jurors will decide in a separate penalty phase whether he should get the death penalty or life in prison without parole. Opening statements in the penalty phase were scheduled for Wednesday. Samantha's mother, Erin Runnion, in the front row of the courtroom, cried silently as verdicts were read. She hugged prosecutor David Brent as the jury left the courtroom. She thanked jurors, law enforcement authorities, prosecutors, and the media during a news conference. "I feel a tremendous sense of relief that Samantha's fight was not in vain," Runnion said. "He is guilty, 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 and that feels really good because nobody should get away with this." As the first verdict was read, someone in the audience said, "Yes, yes." Avila bowed his head toward the defense table, but showed no emotion. The evidence presented in a 5-week trial included DNA from Samantha collected from a small amount of a clear liquid, which the prosecutor said was consistent with tears or mucus found on the inside of the door of Avila's car. Authorities also collected a sample of DNA that matched Avila's genetic profile from underneath Samantha's fingernails. There were also cell phone and bank records that placed the defendant in the area where the girl was abducted, kicking and screaming from outside her home in Stanton on July 15, 2002. Her body was found the following day in mountains some 50 miles away, left on the ground as if it had been posed. Avila had been acquitted of molesting 2 girls in 2001 in neighboring Riverside County, and authorities said they believe he killed Samantha to avoid another such trial. The slaying occurred amid a series of incidents involving children, including the murder of 7-year-old Danielle Van Dam of San Diego and the abduction of 15-year-old Elizabeth Smart in Utah. Runnion also delivered an impassioned message Thursday to criminals who victimize children. "How many children do we have to take away before we as Americans get organized?" Runnion said. "We outnumber you so many times over there is no excuse, and we're not going to let you get away with it anymore. We're going to organize our neighborhoods and we're going to talk to our children. We're not giving you an opportunity to prey on our children anymore." More than 4,000 people attended Samantha's funeral. In the wake of her death, then, Governor Gray Davis ordered a statewide expansion of child abduction alerts posted on electronic billboards along freeways. Additional evidence presented at Avila's trial included a description of Samantha's abductor, provided by an 8-year-old friend, which led to a police composite sketch that strongly resembled Avila. Police also found sneaker prints similar to those worn by Avila and tire prints like those from his car in the area where the girl's body was found. Defense attorney Philip Zalewski claimed the DNA from the fingernails was not reliable because it was not properly collected or analyzed, and he suggested that the sample found in the car was planted by investigators, an allegation strongly denied by prosecutors. Zalewski noted inconsistencies in the witness testimony and called the rest of the evidence a weak circumstantial case. Avila, he said, couldn't have committed the crime within the timeline established by investigators. Deputy District Attorney Brent, noting that child pornography was found on Avila's computer, said the defendant is a pedophile who killed Samantha because he did not want to go through another trial like the one in which he was acquitted in 2001. One of the girls he was acquitted of molesting had lived with her father at the same apartment complex as Samantha, though she had moved several months before the abduction. Despite the acquittal, Orange County Superior Court Judge William Froberg allowed testimony in the murder trial from the girls in the 2001 case, along with a third who claimed Avila abused her. In July 2002, the quiet suburban atmosphere of Stanton, a city in California's Orange County, was profoundly disrupted by the sudden disappearance of a young child. 5-year-old Samantha Runnion was last seen playing outside her home with a friend when a man approached under the pretense of asking for help locating a lost dog. Within moments, she was forcibly taken. The rapid nature of the abduction and the proximity to her residence sent shockwaves through the local community and prompted an immediate law enforcement response. Tragically, Samantha's body was discovered the following day in a remote area of Riverside County. Initial forensic analysis revealed that she had been sexually assaulted and killed, leading investigators to launch a full-scale criminal investigation that combined traditional police work with advanced forensic science. The case soon focused on a suspect, Alejandro Avila, a man previously acquitted of charges involving child molestation just a year prior. His prior interactions with the justice system and the similarities in behavioral patterns brought his name quickly to the forefront of the investigation. Evidence linking Avila to the crime included DNA samples, cell phone records, placing him near the crime scene, and witness testimony. Investigators also found incriminating traces in his vehicle and digital footprints related to his past behavior. This combination of physical and circumstantial evidence became central in building a prosecutorial case strong enough to seek the death penalty. The legal proceedings that followed reflected both the complexity and gravity of the crime. The trial raised multiple legal questions, such as the extent to which past allegations, though not resulting in conviction, should weigh in a current prosecution, and how media exposure might influence the jury pool in such high-profile cases. Nevertheless, after years of preparation and weeks of courtroom deliberation, Alejandro Avila was convicted on all counts and sentenced to death. Beyond its immediate legal consequences, the case prompted broader discussions about systemic safeguards for children, the monitoring of individuals with prior allegations of abuse, and the capacity of forensic science to bring resolution in sensitive and emotionally charged cases. This case continues to serve as a point of reference for scholars, legal practitioners, and policymakers studying the intersection of criminal justice, child protection, and community response. The case of People v. Alejandro Avila unfolded within the framework of California's criminal justice system, where capital punishment remains a legal sentence for particularly heinous crimes. At the time of the offense in 2002, California law allowed for the death penalty in cases involving murder with special circumstances, such as the commission of murder during a kidnapping and/or sexual assault, both of which applied in this instance. Avila's prior legal history played a controversial role. In 2001, he had been acquitted of molestation charges involving 2 young girls. Though he was legally presumed innocent in that earlier case, the nature of the allegations was similar enough that prosecutors in the Runnion case sought to admit this prior conduct as part of a pattern of behavior under California Evidence Code FARA 1108. This provision allows courts to admit evidence of prior sexual offenses in cases involving sexual crimes, provided its probative value outweighs potential prejudice to the defendant. During the trial, the defense challenged the admissibility of such evidence, arguing that it would unduly bias the jury and lacked a direct connection to the current charges. However, the court ruled in favor of the prosecution, emphasizing the need to demonstrate a consistent modus operandi. The trial also raised procedural questions surrounding jury selection, media influence, and the application of forensic evidence, particularly DNA, which was central to the prosecution's case. After deliberation, the jury found Avila guilty on all counts, and based on the aggravating circumstances recommended the death penalty formally imposed in July 2005. 2. Forensic and evidentiary analysis. The conviction of Alejandro Avila relied heavily on forensic evidence, which played a critical role in both identifying the perpetrator and corroborating the events leading to the victim's death. A. DNA evidence. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence came from DNA samples retrieved from the victim's fingernails, which matched Avila's genetic profile. Additional biological material found on the interior door handle of his car further implicated him. The defense questioned chain of custody procedures and contamination risks, but the forensic documentation proved consistent and well-preserved, meeting admissibility standards under People v. Kelly for scientific evidence. B. Witness testimony. Sarah Arn, a playmate of the victim, served as a critical eyewitness. Her description of the suspect's vehicle, a light green Honda, and the physical features of the abductor closely matched Avila and his car. Her testimony was deemed credible and consistent across multiple interviews. C. Cell phone and financial records. Cell tower triangulation placed Avila near the scene of the abduction and later near the Riverside County area where the body was discovered. Furthermore, hotel receipts and credit card transactions helped establish a timeline consistent with the prosecution's narrative. Digital and behavioral evidence. Investigators also uncovered online activity and chat logs, suggesting that Avila had engaged in conversations that exhibited a disturbing interest in young children. Although not directly linked to the victim, this digital behavior further established motive and psychological intent. 3. Legal conclusion. The legal resolution of People v. Alejandro Avila reaffirmed the capacity of the American criminal justice system to address violent crimes involving children with the utmost severity. The case demonstrated how forensic science, particularly DNA analysis, can play a decisive role in identifying perpetrators and securing convictions. It also highlighted the importance of evidentiary statutes like California Evidence Code 41108, which allow prior acts of sexual misconduct to be introduced when they establish a behavioral pattern relevant to the case at hand. From a procedural standpoint, the trial adhered to due process, providing the defendant with the opportunity to contest the evidence, challenge its admissibility, and present alternative interpretations of events. The jury's verdict and the court's imposition of the death penalty were consistent with California's statutory framework for capital punishment, particularly in cases involving special circumstances such as kidnapping, sexual assault, and the murder of a minor. However, the case also underscored ongoing debates within the legal community regarding the fairness of introducing prior acquittals as evidence, the psychological burden placed on child witnesses, and the use of the death penalty in contemporary jurisprudence. These issues remain topics of scholarly and legislative discussion long after the verdict was delivered. 4. Societal impact assessment. The abduction and murder of Samantha Runnion had a profound effect on public consciousness and policy discourse in the early 2000s. The case galvanized national attention not only due to the age of the victim and brutality of the crime, but also because it exposed perceived gaps in the monitoring and rehabilitation of individuals previously accused of child abuse. In response, there was renewed advocacy for stronger child protection laws, including more comprehensive sex offender registries, longer post-acquittal supervision in certain cases, and expanded use of forensic technology in missing child investigations. Media coverage of the case also led to heightened parental awareness and contributed to the rapid growth of community-based safety programs such as Amber Alerts and Neighborhood Watch initiatives. The case contributed to the public's increased support for legal reforms addressing crimes against children, although it also sparked cautionary dialogue about balancing public safety with the civil liberties of individuals previously acquitted. In particular, it reignited questions about how the justice system should manage allegations that do not result in conviction, yet still suggest risk. From a broader perspective, People versus Avila served as a stark reminder of society's collective responsibility to safeguard vulnerable populations, and it demonstrated the powerful role that the legal system, forensic science, and civic engagement can play in the pursuit of justice.